This bank a little bit, warm this water up. We had about 45 degrees last night, and our water temperatures dropped to about 4 degrees. So um, a lot of times, you know, about that midday bite seems to be probably the most active bite, just because of the water temperature warming up. The metabolism of the fish, you know, gets a little more active. The shad get more active, the fish get more active, and things start kicking in. If you catch that line again, go in there and get that. Yeah, it's one of ours. Sometimes you come in here and you catch, you know, 9.5 and 10-inch fish, and you give this thing a break for about an hour or so, let that sun get up a little higher and get a little more intense on this bank, and come right back in here and you know, catch these bigger fish coming in from this main lake. Right now, you know, you can see we're not even, you know, 300 yards from the main lake out there, and they're coming in back into these little short coves, and there's a never-ending fish supply just coming in and out and in and out. Boy, that one whacked it.
Well, yeah. No wonder. I'm gonna rename this to Toad Cove.
I'm going to show you how these fish are really taking that jig down in their mouth. They're really sucking that minnow down and really getting it down. It's really easy when them fish are hitting that like that. There's an 11-incher. On Mark Twain Lake, you're allowed 15 fish per person, and they've got a rule here that you need to keep your fish separated. I stress that to everybody that I bring in the boat, because not all the time do they use me every time they come up here, but they may use me for a day and then bring their boat up and then fish, you know, a couple of days after the guide trip. So, you know, I always stress the rules and regulations here that everybody keep their fish separated. So it's a tool that the conservation uses here to give you a ticket, and of course, you know, we all want to be legal and do what's right. Every lake is different, so you just need to know the rules of every lake that you fish. It's okay if you got 2 or 3 guys in the boat and you only have one live well. What you can do is, you know, take a pair of scissors, and you can cut, you know, one guy can cut the right fin off and the other guy can cut the left fin off, or you can cut the tail of the fish off. And that way, any way that they're identifiable, or you can use, you know, one guy be on a stringer and the other guy can be loose in the box. So just any way that when they come and check you, that you know whose fish are whose.
It works for bragging rights too.
Yeah. But we're just pitching out to the bank, and we're just slowly letting that jig just fall on its own weight, and we're waiting for that little tick, or we're waiting for that line to go slack. You know, it's a very visual thing when you use this yellow line. You can tell just about what's going on all the time by watching that line. Tickling that brush down there, tickling them limbs, trying to get as close to those limbs and that debris that's laying down there as we can without getting hung up in it. And fishing with a real soft hand. Even if you get hung up, a lot of times you can drop your rod and you can just shake your rod tip and just shake it right off of there. And as soon as that does that, a lot of times when it comes off of that, boom, that's when that fish will react to that bait. staying back away from these fish is a lot to catching fish, is because you're not pulling your boat right over the top of these fish and shading them out and making noise over the top of them. You know, we're early here in the morning, about 8:30, and these fish have come in here from the main lake, and a lot of times they're kind of spooky in the mornings, you know, and you take your boat and you pull them over the top of them fish and they just scatter out. If you stay back a little bit, pitch your bait in there and work your bait through that cover, you can pick these fish off one by one by one and never disturb them. Even if you get hung up, you can pull your line and pull it out away from what you're doing rather than running your boat in there over the top of these fish and disturbing them. Boat control is a lot of it. I mean, I always run my boat. If you see the ripple of the water is coming this way, I always try to run my boat into the wind, and keeps the boat straight. You can let off the trolling motor, you can drift back a little bit, you can pull forward, you can drift back a little bit, and you can keep your boat straight and keep yourself, in your fishing area for a longer period of time. Where a lot of people will drift with the wind, and any time that you do that, you can't keep your boat as straight as if you go straight into the wind. I never let the wind push my boat. I always go into the wind.
Tap. There's it. Hanging over the log.
Kind of move positions, come out of that cove, and what we've got here is we've got a lot of main lake fish have not moved back yet. But what they're doing is that they're taking these little bitty dimples in the bank and they're moving in out of this main lake, and they're coming up in these dimples, and they're going to spawn in here, and then they're going to move back out. So, a lot of times I think that you have cove spawning fish, but you have main lake spawning fish, you have river spawning fish, you got creek spawning fish. I think it depends on which way that fish was born. He kind of does what is instilled in his DNA. If he was a main lake fish and born that way, there's main lake fish. There's creek fish, there's all kinds of different kinds of fish, and I think most of the time when they were born that way, that's the way that they act. Kind of like salmon running up in a creek. If they were born in a creek, they're always going to go right back to that. This is kind of a versatile time of the year because everything's changing. Everything's starting to come alive. The trees are blooming, the weather's getting warm, and a lot of transitions going on right now. And not all fish are doing the same thing. Even this lake, it being 18,000 acres, there's just different cycles that go on here. Some places of this lake, it warms up quicker. Some places, stays cool. So, you hit the warmer areas and catch the fish that are a little further along than the cooler areas, and then you start working your way backwards. Every place that I go on this lake, I always keep a water temperature so that I know when I'm in a cool water place, the fish there are going to be later than the ones that are in the warmer water. So, once you catch the fish, in that warmer water, you can start working your way backwards to go to that cooler water and get right back on them.
Yeah.
Right of those bubbles. Right over the top of the fruit pot.
Some weight to them. Poke at the bottom down there.
Another good 11-inch crappie. White crappie, you can tell the difference between a white one and a black one. If we catch a black one here, I'll show you the difference, but the white ones have these little black bars on them. Black crappie has like speckles, just kind of in and out and in and out, and just no pattern to them. But good, healthy fish, good male fish. You know, a lot of people think that these crappie have paper mouths, and you know, a lot of times you don't set the hook on them. You just kind of, you know, let the fish suck the bait in and just kind of start reeling. And I don't believe that. I believe that, I don't know if you've seen that or not, but when I get a good tick on that line, you know, I really set the hook hard. And you know, you got a long limber pole here, and you got a lot of line out. You got a good 20, 25 foot of line out, and you got a lot of stretch in that monofilament. And you know, when that fish hits that bait, you know, I really give them a good